I should have driven away. That's what I tell myself every night. The rain hit my windshield so hard it blurred everything into streaks of light and shadow, and I was already 10 minutes late picking up my son from my neighbor's apartment. My hands were tight on the wheel, my mind running through bills, shifts, everything I couldn't afford to mess up. Then he appeared. Out of nowhere. A man stumbling into the road like he didn't belong in this world, like gravity was optional for him. I slammed the brakes. The car skidded just enough to make my heart stop. For a second, I thought I hit him. I didn't. He collapsed anyway. I remember sitting there, engine still running, staring at him through the rain. I could have driven off. Nobody would have known. That's what normal people do when something feels wrong. But he lifted his head. Just slightly. Enough for me to see his eyes. Dark. Focused. Not scared. Not even surprised. Like he had already calculated every possible outcome and decided I was part of one of them. Don't let them find me, he said, his voice low, steady, like he wasn't the one bleeding through his shirt. That's when I heard it. Tires. Not close. But coming. My chest tightened. This wasn't random. This was something else. Something bigger than me. Bigger than my small, carefully controlled life. I opened the door before I could change my mind. The cold air hit me first. Then the weight of him as I helped him up. He was taller than I expected. Heavier too. Not weak. Not even close. He leaned into me just enough to make it believable, like he needed help. But something about the way he moved, it felt intentional. Like he was choosing how much of himself to show. You shouldn't be here, I whispered, more to myself than to him. He didn't answer. Just watched me. Always watching. I got him into the passenger seat. My hands were shaking as I pulled away, turning down the first side street I saw. The headlights behind us disappeared. Or maybe they didn't. I didn't check again. I couldn't. The drive to my apartment felt longer than usual. Every red light felt like a trap. Every shadow looked like someone waiting. He didn't speak the entire time. Just sat there, quiet, controlled, like the pain didn't matter. Like nothing did. When we finally reached my building, I hesitated. This was the moment I could still walk away. Drop him off somewhere. Call for help. Pretend none of this happened. Instead, I helped him inside. Past the narrow hallway. Past the worn-out couch. Past the life I had built piece by fragile piece. My son was asleep in the next room. I could hear his soft breathing through the thin wall. That sound grounded me. Reminded me who I was supposed to be. Not this. Never this. I grabbed my small first aid kit, kneeling beside him as he sat on the edge of my couch. My fingers brushed his sleeve, pushing the fabric aside carefully. He didn't flinch. Didn't even react. Just kept his eyes on me. Studying. Measuring. You're safe here, I said quietly, not sure if I was reassuring him or myself. That's when his lips curved slightly. Not a smile. Something else. Something colder. No, he said, his voice calm, certain. You're not. The way he said it did not sound like a warning. It sounded like a fact that had already happened. My hands froze for half a second before I forced myself to keep moving, pressing a clean cloth gently against his side, focusing on something simple, something I could control. You are in my apartment, I said quietly, keeping my voice steady, which means you are safe enough. He watched me like that answer interested him more than it should have. Not convinced. Not reassured. Just, noting it. I could feel it. Every movement I made, every breath, like I was being studied in a way that went deeper than just looking. You live alone? He asked. The question came too quickly. Too casually. I hesitated. Just a fraction of a second. But his eyes caught it. Of course they did. No, I said, sharper this time. My son is here. Something shifted in his expression. Not surprise. Not concern. Something quieter. Calculating. Then he leaned back slightly, as if that information had just changed the rules of whatever game he was playing. How old? He asked. I did not answer that one. Instead, I focused on finishing what I started, wrapping the bandage carefully, making sure it was secure without hurting him. His breathing never changed. Not once. I had seen enough people in pain to know that. Was not normal. You should rest, I said, standing up and stepping back, putting a small distance between us. You can leave in the morning. The moment the words left my mouth, I knew they sounded weak. Temporary. Like I was trying to convince myself more than him. His gaze followed me as I moved toward the sink, rinsing my hands under cold water that did nothing to calm the tension building in my chest. The apartment suddenly felt smaller. Too small. Like the walls were closing in around something I did not understand. Then his phone vibrated. The sound was soft, almost silent, but it cut through the room like a blade. He did not reach for it right away. He just looked at it. The screen lit up briefly, reflecting in his eyes. No name. Just a number. He let it ring once. Twice. Then he picked it up, pressing it to his ear without breaking eye contact with me. Yes, he said quietly. A pause. His expression did not change, but something in the air did. No, he continued, calm, controlled. I am exactly where I need to be. My stomach tightened. I turned off the water slowly, drying my hands on a towel that suddenly felt too rough, too loud. You should not be using a phone right now, I said, trying to sound normal, trying to stay in control of something. Anything. He ended the call without responding to me. Just lowered the phone and set it beside him like it no longer mattered. Outside, a car passed slowly. Too slowly. I could hear the tires on wet pavement, the low hum of the engine lingering longer than it should have. He heard it too. I saw it in the way his eyes shifted toward the window for half a second before returning to me. That same calm. That same certainty. Lock your door, he said. My heart skipped. It is already locked, I replied. He tilted his head slightly, almost amused. Lock it again. The sound of the lock sliding into place felt louder than anything else in the room. I stood there for a moment, my hand still on the door, listening. The car outside had stopped. No engine now. Just silence. Heavy. Waiting. I turned back slowly. He was already standing. No hesitation. No weakness. Just presence. And in that moment, I understood something I should have realized the second I saw him in the road. I had not brought danger into my home. I had brought something far more complicated. And whatever was outside that door, it was not looking for me. It was looking for him. I did not breathe. Not fully. Not after the engine outside went quiet. Silence like that does not happen by accident. It waits. It listens. I turned toward the window, but I did not step closer. I did not need to. I could feel it now, the shift in the air, the way everything in my small apartment suddenly felt exposed, like the walls were just suggestions instead of protection. Behind me, he moved. Not fast. Not loud. But enough that I felt it before I saw it. When I turned back, he was already closer to the door, his posture different now, straighter, sharper, like whatever weakness he had shown before had been something he chose, not something real. Stay back, he said quietly. It was not fear in his voice. It was control. I should have argued. I should have told him to leave, to take whatever followed him somewhere far away from my life. But my feet did not move. Because deep down, I knew something I did not want to admit. If he left, whatever was outside might not follow him. It might stay. A shadow moved past the frosted glass of the hallway window. Slow. Deliberate. My heart started pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. "Do you know them?" I whispered. He did not answer right away. His eyes stayed on the door, focused, calculating, like he was mapping everything he could not see. "They are not here for you," he said finally. That was not comforting. If anything, it made it worse. Because it meant I had stepped into something that had nothing to do with me, and now I could not step back out. The handle on the door shifted slightly. Not opened. Just tested. A quiet pressure, like someone checking if it would give. I pressed my hand over my mouth to stop the sound that almost escaped. My son. The thought hit me like ice. He was still asleep in the next room, unaware, unprotected. I moved without thinking, stepping toward the hallway. His hand caught my wrist before I could. Take 2 steps. Firm. Unyielding. "No," he said, low and sharp. "If you move now, you change the outcome." I stared at him. "My son is in there." Something flickered in his eyes. Not hesitation. Not exactly. But something that acknowledged what I had just said, weighed it, placed it somewhere in whatever system he used to make decisions. Then he released my wrist. Slowly. "Then we do this my way," he said. Another shift at the door. This time louder. More certain. Whoever was outside knew someone was home. My breath came faster now, shallow, uneven. "What is your way?" I asked. He looked at me then. Really looked. And for the first time since I brought him inside, I felt something close to honesty in his gaze. Not softness. Never that. But clarity. "You trust me," he said. I almost laughed. The sound caught in my throat instead. "I do not even know your name." A pause. Just long enough to matter. "Adrian," he said. The name settled between us like it carried weight. Like it meant something beyond just a word. "Adrian." I swallowed. "Emily," I replied, my voice quieter than I intended. He nodded once, like that exchange had just confirmed something for him. Outside, footsteps shifted again. Closer. Waiting. Adrian stepped slightly in front of me, placing himself between me and the door without making it obvious. Without making it dramatic. Just, positioning. Like it was instinct. Like it was something he had done 100 times before. "Emily," he said, his voice low enough that it barely carried beyond me. "Whatever happens next, you stay behind me." My fingers curled into the fabric of my sleeve, grounding myself in something real. I nodded before I could stop myself. And in that moment, I realized something that made my chest tighten even more than the silence outside. I had stopped thinking about him as the danger. And started seeing him as the only thing standing between me and it. The knock came next. Not loud. Not desperate. Controlled. Like whoever stood on the other side already knew how this would end. My breath caught somewhere between my chest and my throat, refusing to move. Adrian did not react the way a normal person would. He did not tense. He did not step back. He stepped forward. One slow step closer to the door, his head tilting just slightly as if he could hear something I could not. Another knock. Same rhythm. Patient. Certain. "They are giving you a chance," he said quietly. I swallowed. A chance for what? His eyes flicked toward me for half a second. To make a mistake. The handle shifted again, this time followed by a voice. Calm. Male. We know you are in there. My heart dropped. The words were not loud, but they carried through the door like they belonged inside the room already. I took a step back without thinking, my hand brushing against the wall to steady myself. Adrian did not move. You have something that does not belong to you, the voice continued. We are here to take it back. Something. Not someone. My eyes went to Adrian. He noticed. Of course he did. Do not answer, he said under his breath. The silence stretched. Seconds that felt longer than anything I had ever experienced. Then footsteps shifted again outside. Not leaving. Repositioning. Waiting. My mind raced through options I did not have. Call the police. Too slow. Run. Impossible. Hide. From what? My apartment suddenly felt like a glass box. Nowhere to go. Adrian reached into his jacket, pulling out his phone. Not the same calm movement as before. Faster now. Precise. He typed something quickly, then paused, staring at the screen for a fraction of a second before pressing send. I watched his face, trying to read something, anything. What did you just do? I whispered. He did not look at me. I told them where I am. My stomach dropped. You what? This time he did look at me. And for the first time, there was something unmistakable in his expression. Not fear. Not regret. Decision. I ended this, he said. Before I could respond, the voice outside spoke again. Closer now. Last chance. The words were softer this time. More dangerous because of it. Adrian stepped even closer to the door, his presence filling the small space like it belonged to him. Like everything did. Emily, he said quietly. I nodded before he finished the sentence. I did not know why. Maybe because my body had already decided that listening to him was safer than anything else I could do. The hallway light flickered once. Then again. My pulse spiked. They will not wait much longer, I said, my voice barely holding. Together. Adrian's gaze stayed locked on the door. They do not need to. That was worse. Much worse. A sudden sound from the bedroom made my heart stop. A soft movement. Sheets shifting. My son. He was waking up. No, I whispered, turning instinctively toward the hallway. Adrian's hand closed around mine before I could move. Not harsh. But firm enough to stop me. Stay, he said. I cannot, I whispered back, panic rising fast now. He is awake. For the first time, Adrian hesitated. It was small. Almost invisible. But I felt it. His grip loosened just slightly. Enough for me to pull free. I took one step toward the hallway before the sound at the door changed. Not a knock. Not a voice. Something heavier. Final. Adrian moved instantly, stepping in front of me again, faster than I thought he could. Behind me, he said. This time, I did not hesitate. I moved. Because whatever was about to happen next, was already inside the room. The sound did not explode. It pressed in. Heavy. Certain. Like the door had already given up before I had. I felt it in my chest before I understood it in my mind. My fingers tightened around nothing as I stood behind Adrian, my breathing shallow, uneven. The hallway light flickered again, casting shadows that moved when nothing else did. Stay with me, he said, his voice lower now, steadier than anything else in the room. Not a command this time. Something closer to an anchor. I nodded even though he could not see me. Another step forward from him. Another shift in the air. Then the door moved. Not wide. Not violently. Just enough. Just enough for the outside to become inside. A figure stood there. Tall. Still. Framed by the dim hallway light like he belonged to it. He did not rush in. He did not need to. His presence filled the space the same way Adrian's did, but different. Colder. More deliberate. "Adrian," the man said, almost casually, like they were meeting in a place that made sense. "Not here. Not in my apartment. Not in my life." Adrian did not answer immediately. I could feel the tension between them like a line pulled too tight. "You took your time," Adrian replied finally, his tone even, controlled. The man stepped inside fully now, closing the door behind him with a quiet click that sounded final. Too final. My pulse spiked again. One more step and I could see his face clearly. Sharp features. Calm eyes. The kind of calm that does not come from peace, but from knowing exactly what is about to happen. "We had to be sure," the man said. His gaze shifted past Adrian for just a second. "Found me." Not surprised. Not curious. Just, noting. Like I had already been accounted for. I forced myself not to move. Not to react. Adrian shifted slightly, just enough to block that line of sight again. "You should not be here," Adrian said. The man's lips curved slightly. Not a smile. Something thinner. "And yet," he replied. Silence stretched again, thicker now, heavier, like the room could not hold it much longer. I heard a small sound from the hallway behind me. A door creaking open just a few inches. "My son." My heart stopped. I turned my head just enough to see him standing there, small, sleepy, confused. "Mom," he whispered. The single word cut through everything. Through the tension. Through the fear. Through whatever control Adrian had been holding in place. My body reacted before my mind did. I stepped out from behind Adrian, moving toward my son, dropping to my knees in front of him, pulling him close. "Hey, it is okay," I whispered, forcing my voice to stay soft, normal. "You had a bad dream, that is all." His small hands clutched my shirt, his face pressing into my shoulder. I could feel his heartbeat. Fast. Too fast. He felt it too. The wrongness in the air. I looked back over my shoulder. Adrian had not moved toward me. But he had moved closer to the man. Just a step. Just enough to make a point. "This ends here," Adrian said quietly. The man tilted his head slightly, considering. "It always does," he replied. Then, something shifted. Not in them. In the air. Outside. A low sound. Engines. More than one. Approaching. Adrian's expression did not change, but I saw it. The smallest shift in his eyes. Calculation. Timing. He had not just called for help. He had called for something bigger. Something that was about to arrive. The man heard it too. Of course he did. His gaze flicked toward the door, then back to Adrian. "You always did like dramatic timing," he said. Softly. Adrian did not respond. He did not need to. The sound outside grew louder. Closer. And in that moment, holding my son in my arms, I realized something that made everything inside me tighten at once. This was not just someone coming to take him. This was two worlds colliding. And my apartment just happened to be where it would happen. The sound of engines did not rush in. It surrounded us. Low. Controlled. Like everything outside had already taken its position before we even understood the rules. I tightened my arms around my son, pressing him gently against me, trying to shield him from something I could not even see. "Mom," he whispered again, softer this time, his voice trembling just enough to break something inside me. It is okay, I said, brushing his hair back, forcing calm into every word. Stay behind me, all right? He nodded against my shoulder, small and trusting, and that trust felt heavier than anything else in the room. Behind us, the tension shifted. Not louder. Not faster. Just, sharper. The man near the door glanced toward the window as the headlights outside briefly washed across the walls, cutting the room into light and shadow. You brought an audience, he said quietly. Adrian did not move. You came to my door, he replied. Do not complain about who answers. The man's expression did not change, but something in his posture adjusted. Not retreating. Not advancing. Recalculating. I slowly stood, guiding my son a step behind me, placing my body between him and everything else. My heart was still racing, but something steadier had settled beneath it now. Not fear. Not exactly. Something closer to resolve. This is my home, I said, my voice quieter than theirs but stronger than I expected. You need to leave. The words hung there for a second. Fragile. Out of place. The man looked at me again. This time longer. As if reconsidering something he had already decided. You think you are part of this? He asked calmly. I did not answer. I did not need to. Because I already knew the truth. I was. Whether I wanted to be or not. Adrian stepped slightly closer again, not touching me, but near enough that I could feel the shift in the air when he moved. She is not part of anything, he said, his tone sharper now. Then. She should not be here, the man replied. Another pause. The engines outside idled lower, quieter, like they were waiting for something to finish inside first. Adrian's gaze never left the man. She stays out of it, he said. Not a request. A line drawn. The man considered that. For a moment, I thought he might argue. Push. But instead, he exhaled slowly, almost like this part bored him. You always complicate simple things, he said. Adrian did not respond. Because they both knew this was never simple. A faint sound echoed from outside. Doors opening. Not rushed. Coordinated. My chest tightened again. This was not ending. This was expanding. The man near the door took one slow step back. Not surrendering. Just adjusting to the new reality forming around him. This is not over, he said quietly, his gaze locking onto Adrian's. Adrian's answer came without hesitation. It never is. The man's eyes flicked to me one last time. Not threatening. Not reassuring. Just, marking. Then he turned, reaching for the door, opening it just enough to step through. The hallway light spilled in again, then disappeared as the door closed behind him with a soft click that felt louder than everything else. Silence rushed back in. But it was not the same silence as before. This one carried weight. Consequence. My grip on my son tightened slightly as I looked at Adrian. He was still facing the door, still standing like nothing had touched him. Like nothing ever could. Who was that? I asked quietly. He did not answer right away. When he finally turned, his eyes met mine with something new in them. Not distance. Not calculation. Something heavier. Someone who will come back, he said. My stomach dropped. And next time. He held my gaze. Next time, he said calmly, you will not be here. I blinked. What does that mean? But before he could answer, the sound outside shifted again. Not leaving. Not fading. Staying. And in that moment, I realized something I had not let myself think until now. This was not over for me either. Because whatever world Adrian belonged to, had just found my address. The engines did not leave. They settled. Like whatever had arrived outside was not here to chase anyone away but to claim the space itself. I stood there with my son behind me, his small hand gripping mine so tightly it almost hurt, and for the first time I realized this was not just about getting through the night. This was about what came after. Adrian moved away from the door slowly, like he no longer needed to guard it. That alone told me everything had changed. "Who is out there?" I asked, my voice quieter now but steadier than before. He glanced toward the window, then back at me. "People who make sure problems do not return," he said. That did not feel like reassurance. That felt like a promise with consequences I did not understand. My son tugged my hand gently. "Mom, I am scared," he whispered. I knelt down immediately, brushing his hair back again, forcing a small smile. "I know, baby. But I am right here, okay? Nothing is going to happen to you." The words came out instinctively. Protective. Certain. Even if I was no longer sure they were true. Behind me, Adrian watched the moment. I could feel it without turning. That same quiet observation, but different now. Less distant. More focused. "He should not be here," Adrian said after a moment. I looked up at him sharply. "This is his home," I replied. "He is not going anywhere." Another pause. Not tense this time. Measured. Adrian took a step closer, his voice lowering slightly. "Then you both are." My breath caught. "What?" He held my gaze, and there was no hesitation in him now. No uncertainty. "You cannot stay here," he said. "Not after tonight." My grip on my son tightened again. "This is my life," I said, the words coming faster now, sharper. "You do not get to walk in here and decide that." Something flickered in his eyes. Not anger. Not exactly. Something deeper. "I already did not decide it," he replied quietly. "They did." The weight of that settled over me slowly, like something sinking too deep to pull back out. Outside, a door slammed. Not ours. One of the vehicles. Voices followed. Low. Controlled. Not chaotic. Organized. My stomach turned. This was bigger than one man at my door. Bigger than anything I could push away or ignore. Adrian moved toward the window just enough to look out, his posture relaxed in a way that made no sense given everything happening around us. "It is done," he said. Done. The word echoed in my head, but nothing about this felt finished. If anything, it felt like the beginning of something I could not stop. I stood slowly, pulling my son up with me, keeping him close. "If I leave," I said carefully, "where do I go?" Adrian turned back to me, and for the first time since I met him, there was no distance in his expression. No calculation. Just certainty. "With me," he said. The answer came too easily. Too naturally. Like it had already been decided long before I asked the question. I shook my head slightly, trying to process it, trying to push back against something that felt too fast, too overwhelming. "I do not even know who you are," I said. A quiet breath left him, almost like he had expected that. "That is the problem," he replied. Another sound outside. Softer now. Controlled movement. Not chaos. Not panic. Resolution. Adrian stepped closer again, stopping just within reach but not touching me. "Not yet." "Emily," he said, my name slower this time, heavier. "Tonight, you saw a part of my world." My chest tightened. "And now?" I asked. He held my gaze. Unmoving. Unwavering. "Now," he said quietly, "it has seen you too." The word stayed with me. Seen. Not helped. Not involved. Seen. Like I had crossed a line without knowing it existed, and now there was no way to step back. My son shifted closer behind me, his small fingers tightening around my sleeve, grounding me in something real while everything else felt like it was slipping out of reach. "I am not going anywhere with you," I said, my voice quieter but firm, holding on to the only control I had left. Adrian did not react the way I expected. He did not argue. He did not push. He just looked at me, steady, like he had already considered this outcome and moved past it. "You are," he said calmly. Not forceful. Not loud. Certain. I shook my head, taking a small step back, pulling my son with me. "You do not get to decide that," I repeated, even though the words felt weaker now, thinner against everything that had already happened. Adrian exhaled slowly, his gaze shifting for a brief second toward the door, then back to me. "Emily," he said, my name softer this time, but heavier, like it carried something I could not ignore. "If you stay here, they will come back." My chest tightened. "You said your people handled it." "They handled tonight," he replied. "Not what comes after." The silence that followed felt different from the ones before. Not tense. Not immediate. Long consequential. I looked around my apartment then. Really looked. The couch. The kitchen counter with the chipped edge. The small drawings taped to the wall that my son made last week. Everything that had always felt stable suddenly looked fragile. Temporary. Like it could disappear with one wrong move. My son tugged my hand again. "Mom, who is he?" he whispered. I swallowed, glancing down at him before looking back at Adrian. "Someone who is leaving," I said, even though I no longer knew if that was true. Adrian's expression did not change, but something in his eyes sharpened slightly. "You can hate this later," he said quietly. "But you will be alive to do it." The words landed harder than anything else he had said. Not dramatic. Not threatening. Just real. Outside, the engines began to fade. Not all at once. One by one. Controlled. Like whatever had come was now leaving in order, not chaos. Adrian moved toward the door, opening it slightly, looking out into the hallway before stepping back inside. "It is clear," he said. Clear. The word felt meaningless. Nothing about this was clear. Not anymore. I took a slow breath, trying to steady myself, trying to think past the fear, past the pressure of his presence, past the reality that my choices were no longer simple. "If I go with you," I said carefully, "this does not become my life." Adrian held my gaze. No hesitation. No false reassurance. "It already touched your life," he said. "I am making sure it does not take it." I closed my eyes for a second, just long enough to feel the weight of everything pressing in. When I opened them again, nothing had changed. He was still there. Watching. Waiting. Certain. My son shifted beside me, looking up at me with wide, trusting eyes. He did not understand any of this. He only understood me. And in that moment, I realized something that made the decision for me. This was not about what I wanted anymore. It was about what kept him safe. I grabbed my keys from the counter with shaking fingers, the metal cold against my skin. Adrian noticed immediately. Of course he did. He stepped toward the door again, opening it wider this time, giving us space to move. "You have 5 minutes," he said. "Take what you need." 5 minutes. To leave everything I knew behind. I looked around my apartment one last time, my chest tightening as the reality finally settled in. Then I turned back, my voice quieter than ever. "If I walk out that door," I said, "I do not come back." Adrian's answer came without hesitation. "No," he said. And somehow, that was the most honest thing he had told me all night. I thought 5 minutes would feel long. It did not. It disappeared the second I stepped into my bedroom and opened the closet, my hands moving without thinking, grabbing what mattered and leaving everything else behind. Clothes went into a small bag. My son's favorite jacket. His shoes. The picture he drew last week that he insisted we keep on the wall. I hesitated there for half a second, then pulled it down and folded it carefully, placing it on top like it was something fragile. Because it was. It was proof that our life had been normal once. My son watched me quietly, his wide eyes following every movement. "Are we going on a trip?" he asked softly. I forced a small smile. "Something like that," I said, my voice steady even though my chest felt too tight to breathe properly. "Stay close to me, okay?" He nodded immediately, trusting me without question, and that trust made everything heavier. I zipped the bag and stood there for a second, looking around the room. The bed. The lamp that flickered sometimes. The window that looked out over a street I knew by heart. All of it suddenly felt like a place I had already left, even though I was still standing in it. "Time," Adrian's voice came from the doorway. Not rushed. Not impatient. Just final. I picked up the bag and took my son's hand, walking past him without stopping. I could feel his eyes on me, but I did not look at him yet. Not until I reached the front door. My hand hovered over the handle for a second. Just 1 second. Then I opened it. The hallway looked the same as always. Quiet. Dim, ordinary. But it did not feel ordinary anymore. Nothing did. Adrian stepped out first, his movements calm, controlled, like he had done this 100 times before. I followed, pulling my son close, my senses sharper now, noticing every sound, every shadow, every shift in the air. The building felt too quiet. Like it was holding its breath. We moved quickly but not hurried. Down the stairs. Past the familiar walls that suddenly felt unfamiliar. When we reached the exit, Adrian paused, glancing outside before opening the door. Cool night air rushed in, carrying the faint smell of rain and something else I could not name. The street was not empty. Black vehicles lined the curb, their engines low, steady, like they had been waiting. Men stood near them, dressed in dark suits, their posture straight, their attention sharp. Not chaotic. Not threatening in an obvious way. But unmistakable. They noticed us immediately. Of course they did. One of them stepped forward slightly, nodding toward Adrian with quiet respect. No words. None needed. Adrian gestured toward one of the vehicles, then looked back at me. "You get in first," he said. I hesitated again. Not because I did not understand what was happening, but because I did. This was the point where everything became real. No turning back. No pretending this was temporary. I tightened my grip on my son's hand and walked forward, each step heavier than the last, until I reached the car. The door opened smoothly before I could touch it. I guided my son inside, climbing in after him, pulling the door closed behind us. The sound echoed louder than it should have. Final. Adrian slid into the seat across from us a second later, the door shutting with the same quiet certainty. The car began to move almost immediately. No hesitation. No delay. I looked out the window as the building disappeared behind us, shrinking into something distant, something I could not go back to. My son leaned against me, already calmer, already trusting that I knew where we were going. I wrapped an arm around him, holding him close, my eyes still on the fading streetlights. Adrian watched me from across the car, silent, unreadable. After a moment, I turned to face him. "Where are you taking us?" I asked quietly. He held my gaze, his voice calm, certain, like everything else about him. "Somewhere they cannot reach you," he said. I swallowed. "And you?" He did not look away. Not even for a second. "I am the reason they will try," he replied. The car turned down a darker road, the city lights shifting around us, unfamiliar now, distant. I leaned back slightly, my son still in my arms, my life already somewhere behind me. And as the silence settled inside the car, I realized something I could not ignore anymore. I did not just leave my world behind tonight. I stepped into his.